Good evening, everyone, and welcome to When the Shift Hits the Fan. My name is Mark Jeffrey, and I'm here once again with my beautiful co-host, Linda Lehman. And this is session 2 in our 4-part session on being an entrepreneur. What does it take to be successful in actually doing this? And both Linda and I have gone through that transition of being the quote-unquote newbie to being two very successful ladies working from home. Now, we work from home in a couple of different ways as well. I work mostly as an online marketer, an affiliate marketer, and Linda does some consulting, and she also works online. So, we kind of do a little bit of both, and I'm also a speaker, and I do that a little bit as well. Last week, we talked about getting your environment set up and getting ready to get the set. And tonight we want to talk about something that I know and I feel is extremely important when people are starting off. And it's because I talk to people every day, because people are joining my business every day. So I have a lot of different perspectives that are brought to me, and how some people, like the statistics, and I know I'm jumping all over the place here. There's a lot on my mind tonight. But statistically, only 5% of people will even have a hope of succeeding working for themselves. And that could be a franchise. I mean, this is real world stuff. It's not just online marketing. This is people who decide to work for themselves. Because there's a lot that has to go into this. Tonight we're going to talk about the why. But it's a who, what, where, when, why, really, when it comes to being successful as an entrepreneur. Like, who are you, and are you ready to do this? What are you going to be marketing? When are you going to be doing this? These things are extremely important. And the why, for me, is the one thing that will get you going, but it's definitely not the thing that's going to keep you in the game. It's just not enough. Like and Linda and I just talked about this, is I want to stay home with my kids. Great. But that may not be enough of a why to keep you through all of the obstacles and the challenges that you're going to be faced with. Sometimes it may be that you have a backup plan. You have another job, and you're going to try doing this for a while to see if it works out. And it might be a perfect opportunity, but because of the way you've chosen to walk into it, maybe it's not going to work for you, or maybe it's going to take a long time. The most successful people, and we hear and we read about them all the time. These are the stories that you hear a ton of when especially online marketing, is the kind of rags to riches. Like, my back was against the wall and I had nowhere to go but up. Well, those people tend to make it because it doesn't matter about the why or the what or the anything. They just have to make it happen. So against all odds, they're going to do it because I have to do it. And that's a different mindset, totally different mindset, totally, from people who are successful in life, whether you're mediumly successful or you're very successful. Being down and out is a whole different mindset. And what brought all of this together was I happened to be speaking to someone who was at the top of their game when their world crashed. I mean, everything happened. There was a serious accident, house burns down, kids, the relationship with the child moved back home. Everything happened crashing down on this person. And it was interesting for me to speak to them because I thought, why are you now not doing anything? Like, you have the skills, but why are you now not doing anything and everything to get you back to the place that you wanted to be? And the answer to that actually is that isn't a place she wants to be anymore. It was too devastating for her. It was a bad experience. So even though she might want to get to somewhere, where she was is a net. And I think we all have to think back into those experiences that we may have had in the past when we're making forward decisions. Because what's happening is all of those things that we know from our past could be sheltering us from future disasters. It could be that we think that that's what we know, so that's where we should go. But because it wasn't good for us, more roadblocks are going to be put in your way. See, she's wise. She's wise to understand that that's not a place. I could easily go there. I could easily be successful, but it's not the place that I need to be. So learning a new skill set, doing things differently is the challenge that I take on today. So, you know, I think Linda, I was a little bit guilty of maybe judging someone just this past week. And I think that we do that a lot, but more importantly, I think we judge ourselves a lot. You know, what do you think about this?
Mark, that's a lot, and I love that you shared this story. And yes, I think that we're all guilty of judging others without knowing the whole story. But a couple of comments that I wanted to make, just to kind of, I guess, give a little bit of a contrast for us to think about. There's a difference between using the memory of a past experience to help you learn what not to do, and using the memory of a past experience to put up a roadblock to keep you from being the success that you want to be, or that you can be, or that you should be. And it's important for all of us to understand that difference. So as we use our mental faculty or mental muscle of memory to look back, it's very important that we really pick it apart. You know, if we are using a past memory or a past bad experience to our memory of it, to help us decide which way we're going to go now. You know, it's like Thomas Edison, you know, failed, 10,000 times? And somebody said, you know, why didn't you just give up? And he said, you know, I really didn't fail 10,000 times. I just figured out 10,000 different ways not to invent the light bulb. But he was using those memories of when it didn't work to push him forward into a different and a better direction. Now, there are times, as in the example that you gave, that there are situations that we're presented with that it may not be the goal, the ultimate goal that we need to change, but we certainly may need to change the direction that we're going and use that experience to help us grow past those directions so that we don't take it again. Do you agree, Mark?
I definitely do agree, and I think that it's sometimes, I think, for anybody, I think it may be difficult to discern between the two, because obviously when we fail at anything, we feel bad. You know, we just don't feel good about it. We feel bad, and so that's going to make us a little gun shy to try and do something again. It's like anything, and it's interesting how as we get older, we should be getting wiser, but that really isn't what happens to us, because, and I know I've told this story before, but I have to tell it again because it's just so perfect for this show tonight, is I had a pair of Panda, I call them Panda because they were the black and white little shoes that we got. I don't know, some of you who are younger may not remember this, but they had a really slippery sole on them. And my parents at my mom's house, she had these sidewalks that were a little crisscross. So they were kind of, you know, they get snow, so they have crisscross walks to kind of keep them, you know, from slipping. Well, I didn't. I slipped. And I skinned my knee. Fairly good on this little grid pattern that I had there. But I love these shoes so much, I was not going to not take them off. I was going to figure out a way to walk. Now, I'll tell you, by the time I was done figuring out how I could walk on this stupid sidewalk, I had skinned both of my hands, my knees, my socks were full of blood. I mean, it was just bad. But that's how tenacious I am about things, to a fault, where there are some times where I just don't give up when I should. And I never learned I never learned the lesson like that. I just keep going. I always think, no matter what, there's got to be a way. Now, I got to put my hand in and say, it saved my life. But there are some times where, I spent a lot of money, I listened to all the wrong people, and made a lot of bad choices because I didn't give up. When I should have recognized, like we talk about this, right? My intuition, my gut. I knew something was, but I kept blaming it on myself. Well, it must be something about me. If everyone else is successful at it, I must be doing something wrong. And we talked about this, right, Linda, just the other day about the bad choices there are out there online that so many people are getting hurt by, that it's just, it's horrible.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, Mark, too, it comes down to us really doing our research, doing our homework, because it may not be, Mark, that the goal, the desire to work for yourself, that might not be the bad part. The bad part might be where we stumble or where we find the roadblocks. Might be in what we choose to do. Like you said, making some poor business decisions and going with this particular product versus that particular product, or this business versus that business. That's where the misstep or the lesson needs to be learned, to do a little bit more research and dig into it instead of just taking face value. If somebody said, I made $1 million in 3 months, show me how you did that and exactly what resources you already had at your fingertips before you made that claim. So I think it's really important for us to just take a step back and as you said, listen to that intuition. Listen to it well, because it's not going to steer you wrong, even though I have to confess myself too, for the longest time, many years, I tended to ignore my intuition more than I listened to it, and I would go down twisting and turning roads that led me nowhere, or gave me some opportunities to have to claw my way back out again. And I didn't exactly learn those lessons the first time I went down that path. Mm-hmm. But again, I think we need to do some good old-fashioned soul searching. Is going into business for myself, or having this company or this other business, is this truly what my purpose is? Is this what I truly want to do? And we need to ask that question and then shut up and listen.
Yep, that's exactly it. And I get it. I mean, I talk to everybody every day. I hear the many stories of people who said, well, I got involved with this and I believe this person. I thought I could trust him, and I did that. And when I first started, I was a naive little girl coming into this going, okay, in the real world, brick and mortar, everybody has to tell the truth primarily because there's rules to the game. But when I got online, I realized that wasn't necessarily the case. So it was very difficult for me to discern the truth from the lies. I get that. I know some of these people, it's like the snake oil guys way back in the Western days, there's always going to be people that can sell you anything even though you don't need it or want it, including giving up all of your money to tell you on a hope and a prayer. And I guess that's what we have to come down to, is never invest more than you can afford. I don't care what anybody tells you. The primary thing I hear out there a lot is, well, if it mattered to you, you'd find the money. Well, don't let anybody tell you that, because you should not be not feeding your family or paying your mortgage or your car payments or whatever. You're financially, you have to look after yourself and your obligations before you jump off, a diving board into the deep end when you know nothing about it. it's fine for me to now say, you know what, I'll throw 20 grand at that because that looks like, it's fresh off, looks like it's got a few good things going for it, because that's expendable income to be able to do that. But if I was a single parent with children and I was just barely making it from week to week, that would not be a choice I was making. And if somebody said to me, well, you know what, you're not serious then, you really need to know that's not who you should be doing business with. That's for sure.
Right. They need to be concerned about, I see and understand your situation. Let me work with you. We can come up with some ideas on how you might be able to earn additional income if this is something that you want to truly invest in. I mean, that would be, in my opinion, a better course. None of us can truly succeed in any business endeavor that we do, whether it's going into business for ourselves or even reaching past our comfort zone to take a job that we think that would be really wonderful for us, but it's going to be a stretch. There's a risk there. But those risks need to be calculated. I mean, we're never going to succeed at anything unless we take risks. And sometimes the greater the risk, then the greater the reward. But those risks must be calculated. You must weigh the odds. It's just like, and I know that I've told this story before, Mark, when I learned how to rappel. That's pretty dangerous. You don't just say, you know what, I'm going to jump off this cliff today, and with a rope tied around my waist. You don't just do that because you're going to fall to the bottom. What do? It is a risk. But you do your research. You find the people who are seasoned and experts at this, proven experts at this, I want to add, so that they can teach you how to do it safely, or as safely as possible, and be there to guide you. And that's what we did. We found an instructor who was a seasoned instructor, taught us all about it, showed us how to be safe about it, and then we did it. And it was an awesome experience. Took all of us out of our comfort zone, yes. And was it a risk? Yes, it was. But it was a calculated risk. We did our homework. We did the research first. And we all must take that same mindset into the business that we want to go into. If it's something different than what we're currently doing, if it's that stay-at-home mom who wants to venture out and start earning an income for herself and her children, there's going to be risk, and you need to weigh. Okay, I'm willing to risk this right now. And as it is successful, because this is a burning desire that I have, then I'm going to risk this other piece. But Mark, there's something more important than that. You talked about the why.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, staying home with your children is an excellent why. But is it big enough? Because you and I talked previously too about, okay, my child is young now, but when they start to school, is this still going to be my desire, or am I going to want to get out there and work, go in the workforce, or get outside of the home and work once they're off at school? So is that big enough? I think that we all need to do some really good, again, soul searching. What is our true purpose? What are we truly here to do? What just makes our heart sing every time we think about a possibility or dream about the possibility of doing this or being this? That might be a grander why, even though that why might enable you to do a goal of staying with your children. So staying at home with your children is a goal, but the why is even bigger than that.
And I think, everybody's going to find their own path. I know when my daughter was young, and she was just, starting between the daycare or the kindergarten, going into school and stuff like that. And I kind of fell across an opportunity because someone I was, working for, they actually were going bankrupt, and I had an opportunity to buy the company, and decided that I was going to do that. And, long story short, because I don't want to go into all of it, But it was interesting how I adapted things because her and the dog, because I owned the business, it was easy for me to make it comfortable to me. So I could go, she could go to school, me and the dog and her, and for a while there was a cat running around somewhere around there. Would come and she would actually be, playing around there and working a little bit, and it was kind of good because it was a little girl, and she could make little clothes and do little things and stuff with the scraps of clothing. We had a clothing manufacturing company, and and from there it was developed an atmosphere where all of my workers, they were all from Hong Kong, and they had kids and stuff like that. They would bring theirs, and she was learning Mandarin. They were learning English. It was a great environment. I wasn't at home at all. I mean, I was there for a long time because it took a long time to get this company back to where it could be sold again and move on. And that's another thing. Things are going to change in your life. I mean, that was something that I did then. That's not a dream of mine now. Even though I did it and know I could redo it because I have the skills to do it, doesn't mean that I'm going to do it again. And that's another thing to understand is that throughout your life, things are going to change. Linda, yours have changed just in the last year to, things that you decided you wanted to do or to not do. And I think people have to understand that as well, is that what am I going to say? I was going to say there's no shame in that, but it doesn't, it's your life, and you get to choose. So let's say you started, okay, Linda will say, you started an online business because you thought that that's what you wanted to do, and you got involved, you spent a little bit of money, but then actually when you got into it and started working it, you decided, you know what, that's simply not for me. Well, the courage to walk away from it is great too. That's not a failure. Some people think that might be, but that's not. I mean, we have to really, perspective is a whole big thing, right, Linda?
Mm-hmm. Oh, perspective is huge. And I don't want people to be listening to this and rationalizing to themselves that they just heard Linda and Mark say that it's okay to give up, because that's not what you're saying.
No.
No. Well, we're saying
no, I built. For that business, I built that business into a multi-million-dollar business and sold it at the top of my game, which allowed me to take the time off to do whatever I wanted to do after that, and to be discerning and to play and to dabble and to do what I do. But remember what I said beginning of that? I was there from dusk to dawn. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what it took. So, I wasn't prepared to give up because I knew I had a dream. I was going to have a successful clothing manufacturing company. That was my dream at that time. But you're right, Linda. I guess, you could really give yourself an out on that one, couldn't you, if you weren't tough enough. But that brings it back, Linda, that brings you back to the why. The what and the who. Like, are you the person? Is what you have the right thing? And why are you doing it? If you don't have the big enough of any of those, well, it's always going to be, okay, well, that didn't work.
Oh, exactly, Mark. And I guess to bring down to try to simplify the example a little bit, I just really want to reinforce that we're not saying give up. Like if you go into, if you decide, well, I really want to work for myself, and you start saying, oh, jobs online or things you can do from home online, and you do that, and it just has no excitement for you whatsoever, then again, it goes back to the light bulb. Okay, working for yourself doing this online business or this online stuff is not for you. But that doesn't mean that you've killed the dream of working for yourself. There's just another avenue that you're going to take to do that. And I really want to make sure that we stress that, because we're not sitting here saying, well, if it doesn't work or something, then maybe it's not for you and you can give up on it. No, we're not saying quit on your dream at all. We're saying, okay, instead of maybe forcing a how, which a lot of us do, Mark, don't you think that, especially when people are first getting into an online business and first getting into the idea of working from home, they try to force the how.
And Linda, that's exactly right. Because people say to me, they come online, they come into my sphere, and they're going, well, how do I get started? And I just stop and I say, well, why do you want to start? And man, I'll tell you, I've got more pregnant pauses than you. It's like, well, what do you mean? And I'm going, if you can't answer that question, I don't want your money. Somebody else will take it. But until you can answer that question, the how doesn't matter.
Exactly. And I'll try to. I'll keep it simple here. Even you talked about opportunities that I've had over this past year, and I've even recently had. I had an opportunity presented to me just recently that would put a substantial amount of additional income into our coffers. And so I know that the old Linda from years ago would have jumped on it just because it was this shiny gold, quite a bit more money being dangled like a carrot in front of my face. I would have taken it. And I would not have stopped to think about what would I be giving up to go for this new shiny object. I would actually just be doing something lateral, but I would be putting in tons more hours, tons more work. I would be away from home a whole lot more. I would have to start thinking about the different aspects of my own business as to what pieces of that I would be willing to give up in order to dive into this shiny new penny. And it came down to, and I stopped. I listened to my intuition and said, okay, I'm doing this now, and I waited to see what it felt like. And Mark, it didn't feel good at all. I was just totally closed off. I was almost sick to my stomach when I thought about making that change, accepting that additional money and going that direction. And when I thought about continuing my course, continually, steadily moving forward with my plan of how I see this year and my 5-year plan to come turn out, it was refreshing. It was opening. I felt wonderful. I felt at peace, and I knew that turning down that offer was a good, sound decision for me personally and a good, sound business decision. But I had to really stop and ask myself those questions.
Well, yeah, and I think, too, you have to be really in tune with yourself to understand the difference between the enthusiasm of starting something new and that kind of where you can get a quiver in your whole being to, like you were saying, Linda, almost that sick, turbulent feel in your stomach to maybe it's not right for you and you should take a slower, longer look at it. And perhaps there's just a question that needs to be answered or, something that has to be defined in a different way that will allow you to take the step forward. But always listening to what your inner being is saying. It's not always a bad thing. I know you hear that all the time. Crush your fears, just go do it. Well, that's good on one hand, and I go for it all the time. I'm the biggest advocate of that. I've stubbed my toes many a times. I don't regret any of it, but some people cannot afford it. Hey, some in your life, in your finances, all these things. Because I'll tell you one thing, and we talk about this a lot, being an entrepreneur is a hell of a sacrifice. You're gonna sacrifice things that you never ever dreamed of. And your family and your friends are also going to sacrifice right alongside of you. You're going to meet obstacles and challenges that you never, right now, you can't even think about. You're going to challenge yourself. You're going to question yourself. You're going to make yourself crazy. And I'm not going to say that it's not worth it because it really, really is. But you've got to watch the minefield along the way. And this is a big subject. We'll probably be bringing it up throughout the next couple of sessions. But once again, we're at the bottom half of our hour, so I want to leave the last words to my co-host, my friend, and the wise lady I've come to know, Linda Lehman.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Well, I was going to share something else tonight, but I'm going to save it for another time because I think that what we were talking about today was very, very important. So I want to encourage all of our listeners to spend the time it takes to go within and listen to your heart, listen to that intuition, that inner voice that's there wanting desperately to guide you. And take the time to look at all of the risks involved. And by all means, once you have those figured out, step out of your comfort zone toward your dream. But again, make sure that it feels good to you.
You betcha. So what you got to do, you dream it, but you got to plan it, and then make sure you're living it. Live the dream because you can. So for Mark here in Canada, good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone from Linden, Florida.